Alright guys, so today I want to spend some quality time on round 1, Thor versus Lubu, because it's been a while since we've seen these two together, and considering how far we're into Ragnarok, I wouldn't be surprised if some of you guys have already forgotten about it, or maybe just dismissed it entirely for some of the more popular fights like Adam versus Zeus, or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure with the more fights we get, we'll only start to overshadow the previous ones with the more prominent or current ones we're soon to see. And with that said, I'd say Thor versus Lubu is the biggest victim of this, which is a shame because I would be the first to admit that I think Thor versus Lubu is a perfect fight. So today I just want to get into the reasoning for why I believe that and ultimately help bring everyone back to speed to what I think made us fans of this story to begin with. So yeah, let's just get into it. I think it's fair to assume the majority of readers agree that the beginning of any fight starts as soon as Heimdall announces the fighters, or maybe even as soon as we just see them enter the ring, which are both reasonable to assume, and conversely the fight would have to end by the time we get the ending title card that announces the victor. But ultimately this is a story, so when I look at round 1, I'm mainly looking at chapter 1 all the way up to mid chapter 7, considering how relevant all the information is within this strip of content to everything happening in the fight. I'm mainly mentioning this because the survival of mankind and the gravity of that statement feels like it shines the most in round 1. Now, I don't want to compare round 1 to any of the other fights we've seen, just for the simple fact that it wouldn't really help the case of what makes round 1 as good as I believe it to be. But in this example, where the entire story is supposed to be about the end of the world as far as humanity is concerned, regardless of what round we're in, I find that round 1 just carried the pressure of that premise much more closely than any of the other fights we've seen so far. To an extent, I understand this probably is an unfair point to make, given that round 1 is round 1, so by default it sits more closely to the overarching tension of the end of mankind that's introduced at the beginning of the story, much like round 1. So in other words, it doesn't even have to be Thor versus Lubu, it could have been anybody, and round 1 would still have that advantage over any of the others until proven otherwise. I think a good example of what I'm trying to say though is Poseidon versus Kojiro, where it's mainly about the biggest winner versus the biggest loser, or the idea of evil versus good in round 4. And even though I think both these concepts do end up relating somehow to mankind's survival, Thor versus Lubu is the most transparent and direct at this being about the end of mankind for just so many reasons. Two good examples that come to mind almost immediately is when we see Brunhild and Hermes explain how Volund works for the first time in the story, and when we see the roster of all 26 fighters. And this is all happening in the middle of round 1, which makes this exposition relevant to everything we see happening right at the start of chapter 1 in Valhalla. So it all comes full circle to what's actually on the line here, how this is all going to play out, and more importantly, and the point I'm trying to make here, the effects this has on Thor and Lubu. And because no other fight so far has shown this kind of world building that affects what we know for the rest of the tournament to this extent, it just makes round 1 all the more significant until we get information just as important as the roster with all 26 fighters, or something as big as like how Volund works. Also, I think it goes without saying how much hype the story was riding on when we learned about Volund. It's only after Hermes finally explains in depth what Volund really is when we see Lubu start to overpower Thor at the same time, forcing Thor to lower Mjolnir and take some damage by his spear. And this is actually happening after Lubu countered Thor's hammer for the first time, so the fight so far at this point is in Lubu's favor when he strikes Thor for the second time. So again, everything seems to come full circle, which not only helps build the story but also help drive the stakes of what this tournament is all about and make the fight between Thor and Lubu feel just all the more hype. I think what also helps is seeing a warhammer versus a spear, because to my knowledge I don't think I've ever seen that be done before, let alone to this extent or under these circumstances. So I definitely see that as a plus, as opposed to like typical battle manga tropes like sword versus sword or just a simple fist fight. And still, despite this very weird matchup of the hammer versus the spear, this honestly felt like a match that was destined to happen, like the stars had to align or something, just so that Thor and Lubu could face the one and only worthy opponent they were searching their whole lives for. And I think what helps is a lot of the power feats we see between these two that earn them the right of being the strongest, and that they both deserved this fight for no other reason other than that. One of my favorite examples of this is when Lubu just straight up tanks Thor's Girud, which was when he threw the hammer in the air and just swung at Lubu after he caught it back like a boomerang. And considering we find out that this was Thor's finishing move on Jormungand, which is, if you know your Norse mythology, a massive moment for Thor, this in all fairness had every reason to fool everyone into believing Lubu just got one shot, but he actually ends up surviving it, which even shocks Odin. important, and understandably so given how much legend is given to this ultimate move. So for Lubu to just tank this by only suffering an injury to the leg is insane, and not only because this implies how extremely durable he is, but also how worthy he is as an opponent for someone like Thor. And the way we learn about their history and what brought about their legacy also helps just max out the hype we get, considering that we get like 2 backstories each for Thor and Lubu. And what I especially like about Thor's is when we learn about his gloves and the reason for it in the backstory. This is mentioned later on when Zeus brings it up again and clarifies that the purpose of the gloves was actually meant to protect Mjolnir from Thor and not the other way around. So all this does is just drive the hype we get behind the dialogue and momentum building up to when Thor tells Lubu, don't die on me now. That's one of my favorite lines in the fight too. And even though Thor's first backstory is pretty basic, I think it serves as a perfect example of what an average record of Ragnarok backstory is. It's bloody, it's violent, it's legendary, and it's a spin on Norse mythology, which paints a picture of what you could expect for any of the other 12 gods that are going to fight. And I think this really helps develop some culture to the world that we're getting, since it means we're going to get stories from all different kinds of civilizations like Greek, Egyptian, Norse, Indian, whatever the case may be. What also really sells the fight is the choice of dialogue and narration we get from the supporting characters in the crowd, all the way to what Heimdall is saying, to Chang'e and the 3 generals, to Shiva, to Forseti, and to Zeus and Hermes. We get the perspective of this fight from so many angles that not only shed some light on their origins and character, but help develop a small power scale between Thor and Lubu. It also helps how many times Heimdall or the narration keeps selling the point that these two are the strongest. They were made to fight only each other, that no one else is worthy to them other than themselves. Also, seeing the buildup of all this to their first sequence of dialogue is also one of my favorite moments in the fight. After Lubu counters Thor's hammer and just tells him that big line, hey, you're pretty good, and then seeing Thor acknowledge him and his strength like it's no hard feelings and just banter when he replies back is one of my favorite moments. And seeing how adorable they are until the point Red Hair has to come out and beat the legs for Lubu made this honestly feel like it could have went either way, since it didn't look like either of the two were exhausted or at their limit even after Lubu survived Girud. And although we see Red Hair come out, we then get the second Lubu backstory that helps build even more momentum to what's going to happen now that he lost his leg, making it feel pretty 50-50 as to who could win this, especially considering that when we see Lubu without Voland was able to split the skies. I think that just solidifies that his human strength is beyond regular and he rightfully earned the title of the strongest. So even without a leg, the story pushes for Lubu now by showing his strength is still just legendary. And I think the fact we even get to see Red Hair become part of the fight just creates more tension with regards to that Lubu and Randgriz and Red Hair are all counting on each other to win this now, making the stakes just way more intense than what they originally were. I know how on a surface level this fight may seem pretty easy to explain. I mean, you know, just the strongest versus the strongest, but I think the context to this and approach is genuinely 10 out of 10 if you take a deeper scope into the presentation and execution of it all, regardless of how, I guess, watered down anyone would want to explain it. And ultimately, even if round 1 isn't my favorite fight, because I'll be honest, it isn't, I still hold Thor and Lubu as 2 of my favorite characters so far. And seeing how the fight wraps up also has some of the best moments, like when the 3 generals offer a toast to Lubu and slightly grieve over his loss, showing a small moment of, you know, grace and honor. And seeing Thor straight up put some respect on Lubu's name when he sends out Chang'e and the rest of the army as offerings to his spirit help sell the point that despite the fact that someone had to win, Lubu was the opponent that Thor was ultimately hoping for. And seeing humanity take their first step towards the end of the world feels genuinely real here when we see the score is now 0-1. Alright guys, so I'm gonna leave it there, but let me know how you guys are feeling about all this. I know it's been a while since round 1, but personally I always end up going back to it. There's just a lot of moments in it that I find timeless and still appreciate the more I reread it. But I know there are some mixed opinions considering how far we're into Ragnarok at this point, so yeah, let me hear what you guys are thinking, if you agreed or if you disagreed. And if you liked the video, please leave a like, I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want to see more Record of Ragnarok content, just hit the sub button. I'm here every week, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.